So, hi Nadine, thank you so much for being here.
Now, hi Vicky, thanks for having me. It's good to come and chat to you about myself and the company I work for, Sweet Freedom. So, my name's Nadine Maggie, and I'm currently the managing director of Sweet Freedom, which is you can probably see some products which I'm surrounded by, which is we like to call ourselves a healthier indulgence product. So we are a healthier product which people like a bit of treats and indulgence and sweetness in their lives, and we help people to do that in a healthier way. And that's why the company was founded.
Amazing, thank you. So, tell us a little bit more about when and how Sweet Freedom was founded.
Yeah, sure. So, Sweet Freedom was founded by two women founders, Tina and Deborah, back in 2009. And the reason why they started it is they'd written a couple of books on what was called GL or GI, which is about sugar crashes and sugar spikes and diabetes and all of that. And they wrote a couple of books with a nutritionalist. And then they kept getting requested to say, well, why don't you develop a product which helps people to manage that and to manage their sugar spikes? So they created, in fact, I've got it here. The first product they created was this, which was the fruit syrup. And it's basically made out of apples and carob. So this was the original wonky fruit product. It was the offcuts of apples and carob, which is creates a syrup, which allows people to sweeten products naturally. And it's 100% natural. So there's no refined sugar, there's no artificial sweeteners. And it tastes great because importantly, it's got to taste good. There's no point in bringing a product out which is healthier if it doesn't taste very nice. So they founded it. They wanted a more natural, really versatile product, which is what our products are all about. Is it's not just one use. So you can sweeten your coffee, you can sweeten porridge, you can bake with it, you can spread it on your toast. It's got a multitude of applications, but it's all about making sure it's got slow release sugars, which don't give you the sugar spike nor the sugar crash.
Well, it's amazing, thank you. And I'm just thinking back to 2009. This must have been one of the first, if not the first, products of its kind. Because I know
Yeah.
now we see no added sugar and sweeteners. That's something you see quite often. But back then, I, th- uh, from memory, because obviously we are going back a bit, it was all sort of artificial sweeteners
It
were the
was.
alternatives.
Yes, it was all sucralose and saccharin and erythritol, and that was how you cut down your calories and sugar intake. But they were all artificial, and I would say yes, these were the sort of founders in the market. Now, in you could probably go to the Mediterranean East and Eastern Europe, and you had date syrups and agaves and things like that. But in the UK, this was definitely the first fruit syrup in the market and a natural sweetener which didn't contain artificial sweeteners or high sugar fructose.
Thank you. And so that was the first product, but there's a bit of a range now, isn't there?
Yes, so basically since then we expanded into what we call the choc shot, which is again a first to market. It's the first to market liquid hot chocolate. So you basically just put it into milk and it makes a hot chocolate, but you can also drizzle it. They were then the first to market with the choc pot, which was the first chocolate spread, which basically didn't contain sugar, didn't contain palm oil, didn't contain artificial sweeteners. And basically, we give 10% of profits of this to the Orangutan Project. So it's again that giving something back. But I won't name the product competitor, but everyone knows a famous chocolate spread, but we are 74% less fat and half the calories. So that's another first to market. And then we're just about to launch another first to market, which is the drink, which is, believe it or not, after watching Bake Off the Professionals, we saw an ingredient called cocoa juice. And it's a waste product of the cocoa bean. So we take the cocoa bean and put it into our chocolate products. And we found out this cocoa juice has a natural sweetener. So again, it fits with the whole using fruit as a sweetener. So we've then been working in the past sort of year to develop a drink, which is a sparkling water. So again, fits all of our low calories, sweetened naturally, no artificial sweeteners, using wonky fruit, etc. So yeah, that's our latest one. So we have a trend of making sure it's natural, making sure it's a natural sweetener, ideally from fruit, and it's lower calorie than the mainstream ones out there.
Oh, thank you. And so how do either you or someone in your team, how are you coming up with these, first of all, the concepts and the ideas of
Yeah.
how to naturally sweeten food? So where do those ideas come from, and how is that then developed into a product?
Yeah, I'll talk about the drink because that's a prime
Yeah,
example.
right.
So yeah, I was watching Bake Off the Professionals because I'm a bit of a foodie and I love Bake Off. I love the Bake Off the Professionals, and I saw that ingredient, the cocoa juice, and they were using it to bake with, and I was like, that's a really intriguing ingredient. So then I went back to one of the founders who still works with me, and she sort of looks after MPD, and I said, I don't know if there's anything in this, but I saw this on Bake Off. Can we get our hands on it? So she was brilliant. She then went out and found this ingredient, and then got us some samples, and we tasted it. And by itself, I've got to say, it didn't taste that great. So we were like, right, well, it's not just a simple case of adding it to something. And we've always wanted to do a drink, but the apple syrup that we use and the carob syrup is too heavy for a drink. It would just sink to the bottom. So we said, oh, we wanted to do a drink. Would this be perfect for a drink? We then found a partner who said, okay, we want to create a drink. We want to use natural flavors. And we then did a bit of research. So we then went out and said, okay, well, what's popular? What's popular at the moment? What are the Gen Zs drinking? And we found that more Gen Zs were going down the sort of mocktail, non-alcoholic, healthier, sparkling water range. We said, right, well, that's the area we need to go into. So we just did a bit of research on what's the most popular cocktail, what's the most popular mocktail, what's the most popular flavor. And we ended up coming up with a combination. But we also found that consumers wanted more functional things. So over the last few years, we've seen the increase of CBD, we've seen the increase of protein, we've seen the increase of additional benefits that people want from their food. So we decided that that's what we were going to do. So we worked really hard with our supplier to say, okay, we want a natural, wonky ingredient, which gives you immunity, which gives you your 100% of your vitamin C, which is what this does. So it's really strange. It's a case of we found the ingredients and thought this would make a fantastic drink. And then it's a case of, okay, so how will the drink look, feel? What would be the benefits? What would make us different? And that's the process we went to end up with a drink.
That's a really interesting process.
Yeah, it's a great one because it involves all the team. It involves speaking to our Sweet Freedom customers about what did they like. We did a bit of research on, okay, so what's popular in at the moment, and it was, well, people want good health. So we've got another drink, which is the pineapple one. So pineapple and coconut, which is gut health. So that has dandelion leaf and baobab to help natural gut health and the enzymes. We have a energy drink, but not a high energy drink. It's got a slight energy to give you a little bit of a pickup. And again, we use guarana and cola nut to give you a natural energy. And then the final one is around mental health. So we found a product called Shishandra berry, which helps the mind, helps the focus. And so we put that into our mango and mandarin drinks. So our range of drinks has a variety of different health benefits that people are wanting at the moment in the marketplace. So it's about, again, what do people want? How can we help them? It's about that. What's missing in people's lives? Okay, how can we help to fit that? But naturally.
It's fascinating. It sounds like a huge project, which leads me on nicely to the other thing I'd like to ask you about, which is, so you mentioned how Sweet Freedom was founded. So Nadine, can you tell us a little bit about what your role is and how you got involved?
Yeah, sure. So Yeah, I'm the managing director of the company, so I was brought in to run the company on behalf of the founders. I work alongside the founder, but pretty much I'm the one responsible for setting the strategy, the direction of the business, and then bringing the team together to help them to do that. My career is a really what you would call a squiggly one, and it's not a very natural career trajectory. So I started my career in the armed forces. So I served for 6 years in the armed forces, which gave me probably some really great foundations of leadership, strategy, project management, bringing teams together, and happened to, I would say, fall into HR. I took a temporary job as a filing clerk in HR, and I just loved it. I loved the psychology of people. I loved about the welfare of people, but also how do you get the best out of people? So did my degree in HR whilst I was working at Hallmark and worked my way up from the filing clerk to be the international HR director for Hallmark cards. And that was a very, very big company. It's like 3,500 employees in the UK. And yes, I worked my way up doing lots of different roles in people and did things like NLP and psychology and all of that type of stuff. And then moved to Hain, what was Hain Daniels, and as the international HR director. And then that company went through a series of mergers and acquisitions. I think there was 12 in total, which I was involved in. And then had a chat with the CEO because we got a new CEO, and he said, look, I'm looking to move away from functions. I'm looking to move into more divisions, and there's a managing director role. And I said, well, I think I could do that. And he said, well, yeah, I think you could do that as well. And I have a little bit of a laugh and joke about him because I was the one in the boardroom always going, so why are we doing that? And what's the thought process behind that? And is this the right decision? And we always laugh and joke saying, did you give me the MD role just to shut me up, to make me more responsible? Or was it that you saw something? And we always laugh about that. But I think it was because I had that combination of the armed forces, which is structured, discipline, resilience, strategy, and the people side, which is how do you get the best out of people? How do you achieve the most with what you've got? And how do you empathize and pull people together as a team? So I think those two roles helped me naturally to move into a managing director role. I then had a bit of an epiphany during COVID. I was writing an email to employees every day, basically trying to keep spirits up, trying to keep morale up, trying to keep motivation up. But I was asking questions like, do what makes you happy, find what your purpose is in life. What are you here to do? All of that type, a bit of philosophical type of thing. And I got to it myself and thought, well, what's what makes me happy? What's my purpose in life? And had a bit of an epiphany. And my daughter's autistic, and my best friend was diagnosed with MND, and suddenly thought, I work away all the time. I don't get to spend much time with family and friends. I'm going to take a conscious time out. I'm going to take a conscious year out to just give something back. Try to raise awareness of motor neuron disease, try to raise money, but also spend time with my daughter, because I was working to give her a future, but not spending time in the present. So had a bit of epiphany, decided I was going to take a year out. 6 months into that, I was approached by Sweet Freedom, who said, we really like your CV, we really like your style. You might be too big for this job, but we'd like to chat to you anyway. And as soon as I spoke to the owners and heard about the ethics and why the company was formed and what the products do, it was a no-brainer. It just felt, and I've always wanted to try an SME, because I've always worked for big FMCG companies. And then, yes, I joined Sweet Freedom and absolutely love it. Absolute shock to the system. I'm not going to lie, but I've absolutely loved my time here at Sweet Freedom. So yeah,
Oh,
very
amazing.
squiggly career.
Oh, thank you. That's a great story. I have so many follow-up questions. Where to begin?
Yes.
I guess one thing I'd like to know is at what stage were you brought in? So was there already a team you were brought in to lead, or were you brought in and then you built up the team, or was it a bit of both?
It was a bit of both. So when I joined, there was myself, the founder, and a supply chain manager. Since then, we've expanded the team and brought in sales, marketing, to supplement that. We're still only a very small team. So again, I've gone from being a managing director of 2,500 to 6 of us. So it's all hands to the pump. But I've brought in roles that I felt that the company needed to help us to move to that next level of becoming bigger in the UK, but also internationally, because we'd love to take our products to the US and Australia and the Middle East, because we think there's a real need for healthier products in those regions.
Absolutely. And so there must be, I'm sure, lots of differences between an FMCG and an
Mhm.
SME. I'm sure there are, but I'm
There are.
thinking, what are the or are there any similarities? Are there things you've been able to take from the earlier part of your career and then
Yeah.
apply leading a smaller team?
Yeah, I think ultimately, if you think about the purpose of business and the purpose of an FMCG and an SME, they're pretty much the same, aren't they? Is that the core principles are the same. It's about having a deep understanding of a consumer and delivering a high quality, consistent product to meet their needs. So the end goal of FMCG and SME is exactly the same. You just go about it in a very different way. Um, but it becomes the same as leading the team. If you think about it again, um, even when I had 2,500 employees, is it's all about creating a culture of trust and collaboration. Because if people don't trust you, if people are not willing to work with you, you're not going to get things achieved. So one of the mantras I've always had is being as authentic as you can be as open as you can be, and be as honest as you can be, because that's how you build that trust. And once you've built that trust with either 2,500 employees or 6 employees, is people are willing to listen to you. People are willing to work with you, collaborate with you to get to that end goal of ultimately everybody wants to be successful. You want to work for a successful company, because working for a successful company means that you feel secure. It means that you can provide for your family. So it's that end goal again of wanting to work for a business which makes you feel comfortable in your own life. And it just so helps if you've got a great product and you give something back, it hits those ethics as well. That's a perfect company, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. So I came from before I did what I do, well, many years ago, I worked in
Yes.
corporate communications.
All
And
right.
so, yeah, I'm really familiar with sort of, and I guess the same applies and I work for a huge, huge oil company. And so a
Right.
big part of my role was sort of explaining sort of the vision and where we were
Yeah.
going and what people's parts were in it. And I expect as well that also translates to a much smaller company and that everyone needs to know who we are, what we're about,
Yes.
and what we're
It,
aiming to do.
ultimately, it's the same thing as everybody needs to know what's the purpose of the company, what are we trying to achieve, and how can you help to achieve it. Um, it's a lot easier to do that with 6 people because you can get everybody together and discuss that. There's no sort of Chinese whispers. But one of the things that I did in the FMCG is every 6 months I used to do a town hall to every employee. So I would go and speak personally to every employee in every location, on every shift, to make sure that that message wasn't lost, and gave them the opportunity to ask me questions as well. Because again, that open, honesty, transparent nature meant that people could trust me, and they then believed that the message I was sending, that these are the reasons why we do what we do, here's how you contribute towards that, really helped to. And certainly at Hain, we had a massive business turnaround. Um, we went from a loss-making business to being one of the most profitable divisions in the business, and that was, I truly believe, because we had good communication. People were clear about the end goal. People were clear about the vision and how they contributed towards that and felt proud. So communication is absolutely critical if you want to be successful as a business.
Thank you. And how about creating the culture of the business, because I know I have listeners who are starting to build out their own teams, and there will also be listeners who are maybe at the stage where they're just thinking about making that first hire and starting to
Yeah.
to grow their business. Do you have any advice for how to create the culture that you want in your company?
Yeah, I think you start with the business itself, don't you? You start with, well, what's your purpose as a business? Are you somebody who's really into sustainability? Are you somebody who's into healthier living? What's the purpose of your company? Because I think that helps them to drive what the culture should be, because you should replicate that culture of what your product is. Because if you want people to behave sustainably, then you have to make sure that people who are brought into the organization act and behave sustainably, because what you don't want to do is be pushing water uphill. If you as a business wants to be sustainable, don't bring people into your business who are naturally curious about how you can be more environmentally friendly, for example. But I think you have to know what you're passionate about as well. Because if you're passionate, it comes back to that authenticity. If you're passionate about and being your natural self, then that's a great way of creating a culture. If you try to be somebody you're not, people will see that. So understand what your own values are, understand how you contribute, because that's your natural self, and be your natural self. Because if you try to be somebody else, it becomes incongruent and people won't believe in the culture. And I think certainly from my HR days, as people used to say, it's okay putting things up on the wall, but they watch people and how they behave every day. So just be careful about how you act and behave is what people look for, not for what's written on a wall.
That's such good advice, because you're right. We often look to our leaders, our bosses, however you want to get a view of how we should be acting and what we should be doing. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's really good advice. And I guess also when you're hiring, I suppose it makes sense to know what are the values you're
yeah,
looking for in someone as well. And I guess
yeah.
being clear
Because
on your own is a really good starting point.
it is. It's being clear on what's important to you and what type of people you want to bring into the organization. Because yes, there's lots of people who've got marketing qualifications. There's lots of people who've got financial qualifications. Will they fit with what the company is trying to do, but also how you want the company to behave? And competency-based interviews have been around for years. They're great, but really understand the behaviors, the ethics, and the personality of the person and whether they're going to fit or not, because fit is so key. If you get a wrong team member, it can really derail a business.
And I guess that's particularly, yeah, I think that makes sense. And I guess that's particularly obvious in a small team, because
Yes,
in a company of thousands, of course, you can have people who maybe don't quite fit, but it's diluted a little bit. But in
it's
a small
diluted
team,
down, yeah. When it
I
comes
guess
to
it
a
becomes
small
pretty
team or
obvious.
as a startup, the values of a person and the behaviors and personality of a person are even more important than the qualifications they bring on a piece of paper.
That totally makes sense. And I guess, because I'm gonna move on in a moment, but I guess another
Yeah,
final question I have when we're talking about building a team is, um, and I guess from your experience, how would someone listening thinking, "Okay, I need to start expanding, maybe I need to start growing my business,"
yes.
how would someone know what's the best first hire to make? So whether it's someone to help with marketing, whether it's
Mhm.
logistics, how would you go about working that out?
I think again, it comes down to you and looking at your own strengths and weaknesses and understanding what you're good at and what you maybe not so good at. Um, so are you a good salesperson? Can you build relationships with customers? Do you know what your customers want? Or on marketing, do you know about social, especially in a small company? Because as I've learned, you have to know pretty much about everything in marketing, from category management to social media to PR to SEO optimization of your website. There's a whole gamma. So I think you've got to be honest with yourself and say, not what you enjoy, but what are you good at and what's your skills and qualities? And then go, okay, so maybe where can you bring in that experience? So are you struggling with your social media connections? Are you struggling to get your brand out there in the media? Well, then look at marketing social media. Are you struggling to break through with a retailer, or are you struggling to get listed? Well, maybe you need to then bring in a salesperson who's got that experience. I think the other key thing is as well is, again, understand the difference between FMCG and SME. Is that SME is very much hands to the pump. If you bring in a salesperson from an FMCG role, they'll bring vast experience of getting listings with retailers. However, they've probably got a team behind them. They've probably got lots of category management data, which as an SME you can't afford. So you need to think about that context as well as where have they come from? Because somebody coming from an FMCG might find it very frustrating of how hands-on it is.
That's really good advice. Thank you. And it also leads me on beautifully to the next thing I want to talk about,
Okay.
which is being stocked in retailers, because ever since I spoke to you and became aware of Sweet Freedom, I've seen you on the shelves. You know, every time I go to the supermarket, it feels like you're in a lot of places. And I know that probably has taken time to get
Yes.
there, but I would love to talk about how Sweet Freedom have got stocked in so many places, and maybe a little bit of advice for others looking to do the same, because I know, as I say, it won't have been overnight, but it'd be
No.
great to talk a little bit about how you've got there.
Yeah, sure. So it definitely wasn't overnight. As I say, the business was founded in 2009. Tenacity and resilience, but know what your unique selling point is. Because with a retailer, their space is very much about rate of sale and how much money will be generated from that space in my store. So you've got to try and show why you're bringing something different. So are you going to bring in a different type of consumer, or are you bringing in a product which your consumer is missing, so will help bring them down that aisle, or are you bringing something different and new which is just currently doesn't exist? So find out why your product is different to what's currently out there. What makes your product different? I think the one thing that's probably in existence now that wasn't in existence back when Sweet Freedom founded, and that was just down to pure resilience, tenacity, and knowing that they had a different product. Today, I think the retailers have done a great job in helping to look at SMEs with their sort of accelerator apiary programs. So they all have these innovation programs. And if you're a person who's trying to get your product listed, I think they could be a great entry point for some people, because what these accelerator innovation programs do is give you a listing, guarantee you stores, but they also put some marketing behind it. So for those of you who know about retail, the rate cards for getting marketing in store can be pretty expensive. So what these accelerator programs do is help people to get onto that ladder. So if I was starting out today trying to get my product listed, that would be my first port of call if I wasn't already listed in these stores.
Oh, that's really good to know. And I'm assuming that's something people can just go onto Google and have a look for.
And LinkedIn's very good for watching about when the next cohort's about. So, for example, Ocado have Root, Tesco have their accelerated program, Whole Foods, if you visit them, they've got one. Co-op has the apiary, Sainsbury's has the innovation program. So they all have a different slant on it. But yeah, if you go on the internet, look on their websites. If you look at the business section, so go beyond the shop and look at the corporate section, you tend to find a lot of information on there. But LinkedIn's very good for getting insider knowledge of when these programs are coming up.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
And then, sorry, the final one is some of these bread and jams or product gurus where you sort of do a bit of speed dating. So you basically get to meet buyers and pitch your product to them. Some of them do like Dragon's Den style things. So again, look out for those types of organizations like Bread and Jam and Product Guru, who do these meet the buyer speed dating. Again, it can be another quick way to get in front of people with your product. Or you can appear on Aldi's Next Big Thing. And as you know, you could be the next Aldi fake bake, flaky bakey Jamaican patty, which is just flown. So there's all of those types of things as well, which are popping up.
Oh, that's really useful to know. Thank you. And how about, so obviously you are stocked in lots of places. When you're
Yeah.
launching a new product, so obviously you've
Mhm.
got your drinks coming,
Yeah.
does it make it easier to get your drinks into supermarkets because you have other products there, or because it's a different, a different part of the store, a different product
Yeah.
line? Is it the same as if you were starting from scratch? I'm just curious. I hope you don't mind me asking, but I am
No,
curious.
it's basically start all over again. So, because it's a totally different category, is you have to go through the whole process again of finding out who your buyer is, introducing yourself to the buyer, saying why they should stock your product, sending samples to them, being tenacious, not giving up, finding the opportunities at Bread and Jam or Product Guru. So even though we're currently listed in the supermarkets, we still try to find opportunities. We're still applying for these innovation programs with our drink because it's a whole new category. So it's basically like starting from scratch again. So that's the reason why I can talk so passionately about it, because we're going through the process right now. And knowing that the majority of people who try to launch a product, it doesn't happen overnight. You can be lucky. But and this might sound bad news, but it can take 2 to 3 years to get your product listed. 2 to 3 years of knocking on doors, being resilient, going to these events, reiterating why you're different. And that's why, certainly for an SME, resilience is just paramount.
Thank you. And do you literally, so if you were trying to get stocked in Ocado, do you
Yeah.
literally just keep going back and keep going back to them? Is it, when I
We
say as
always,
simple as that, I know it's not
yeah, yeah.
simple, but is it just
Um,
a case of every time you get an opportunity,
yes,
trying again and hoping you've got the right time? Because I guess a lot of it must be timing
it is
and what else
time, and
is
it's
around.
about when the range reviews happen and what else is around, what's trending. But yeah, we always try and find opportunities to reopen the conversation as, oh, did you know this? So, for example, our drinks have won awards. So every time we win an award, we go back and go, by the way, we've won another award with our drink. We've won a Great Taste Award, or we've won a Health and Beauty Award, or we've won a Wellness Award, or a Sustainability Award. So always looking for opportunities to just keep going back, because buyers must be inundated. They are so busy. So you've got to grab their attention, and you don't just want to keep saying the same message, which is, we've got a great drink, we've got a great drink, because you'll just ignore them. So what's new, what's different, and how are you going to help them? Because ultimately that's what you're there to do, is how can you help the buyer to do their job? What is it that's going to make a difference with your product? So yeah, but you do have to be resilient, and you do have to just keep knocking on doors. And if you can, go into the IGD conferences, go into Bread and Jam and finding them and just speaking to them, and say, even just saying hello sometimes can just be putting a face to a name, makes it a bit more personable than just an email.
Thank you. I think that's really good advice. And I don't think it's disheartening at all. I actually think it's really positive to know that actually you might not get a yes on the first time or the second time, because
Yeah.
it can be hard, can't it? And I think you can get to the point where you think, well, I've asked twice and they've said no, so I'll just give up now. But to know that actually it's okay to keep trying, keep coming
Yes.
back, I think
Keep
is
going.
really good to know.
Yeah, if you truly believe in your product and your product gives something different and it can make a difference to people, don't give up. Keep going.
Thank you. I think that's great advice, which leads me on very nicely to the last question that I ask every guest who comes on, which
Yeah.
is, what would your number one piece of advice be for other product creators?
Oh, I think it would certainly be, understand what the gap in the market is. First and foremost, if you're just creating a new Me Too, it's going to be even more difficult. So find the gap in the market and then build a story, because storytelling is critical. So why is that product you're creating so important? But stick to your values as well. So find the gap, stick to your values, and create the story around it. And as I've said, be resilient, keep going. I think that's ultimately for anybody who wants to bring a product to life, is again, find out where the gap is and then find evidence to support why people need this in their lives. Why do people need a drink sweetened with cocoa juice in their life? Well, That's not, I didn't wake up thinking, do you know what? I need a drink with cocoa juice. No, what I did think is I want a healthier drink, which is ethical, sustainable, and tastes great. So that's how I sell it. Not I've got a sparkling water sweetened with cocoa juice and wonky fruit. It's knowing why people need that. If people wake up missing something, what is it that they're missing?
Thank you. That's really great advice, and thank you for that example as well, because I think you've really shown us how to speak about our products in a way that, as
Yeah.
you say, is much more engaging than saying this has got cocoa juice in it, which to a lot of people doesn't mean anything. Let's face it, because I haven't seen that episode of Bake Off, so I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
But when you start talking about the benefits, all of a sudden I'm getting intrigued now because
Yeah, because it's, and
yeah.
again, when you say cocoa juice, people think it tastes of chocolate. It tastes nothing like chocolate. It tastes like lychee. But there's only so much space on a can that you can explain it. So how do you explain what you're doing quickly and simply to people? It's that elevator pitch, isn't it? Is yeah. I don't want a sparkling water drink sweetened with cocoa juice. I want a healthy drink which gives me something additional. That's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you for all of that. And also thank you for explaining, because I was going to ask you if it tasted chocolate. So thank you, 'cause I didn't have to ask that.
No,
I was
it tastes a
that's been
lychee
in the
and
back of
honey.
my mind. Yeah, the
Yeah,
whole
it's got a
time I was like,
natural,
I will ask.
yeah, it's like a natural lychee honey back note.
Oh, that's really interesting in itself, isn't it? Because you wouldn't know that.
No, you wouldn't know. And what's even better is how we collect it. So we send solar powered trucks to the farmers to go and get it. So not only are they making extra money from something they would usually throw into the bin, but it's also being collected sustainably as well. So it's that sustainability, ethical piece. That's something extra, but it's not the selling point of the drink. It's just something, a natural hygiene benefit that you get knowing that you're drinking an ethical drink.
And as you said earlier, that also ties into the values of the brand and what Sweet Freedom's about. So yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
because that really, I think, is really illustrates the sort of things we've been talking about. Yeah, I think these are really good examples. Well, thank you so much for your
No,
time
no
and for
problem.
everything you've shared.
Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast. It's a great podcast and it really helps people to know, what do I do? How do I do it? Because it's a maze, it's a myriad. You can't just turn up and go, ta-da, here we go. It doesn't work like that.
Well, thank you so much.